Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this three-part series for discussing managing supplier diversity and really building a coordinated approach between those two operations. I'm Ken McDonald, founder of Source SCM Consulting, 30 years of sourcing and supply chain experience. And with me, I have three esteemed colleagues. Dana, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dana Small. I work at BioMarin. I work in global strategic sourcing for the past 10 years and finance 15, mainly supporting global commercial function.
Thank you. Darren?
Hello, everyone. I'm Darren Harmon. I lead the Enterprise Supplier Diversity and Sustainable Procurement Programs.
And Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So my name is Mark Teedens. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Noosh. Noosh is a marketing production and execution software company involved in sustainability as well as supplier diversity in helping marketers buy better.
Welcome to our third installment where we talk about the webinar focused on marketing and supplier diversity and building a coordinated approach. My name is Ken McDonald, Source SCM Consulting, joined here by Dana Small from BioMarin, Darren Harmon from United Health Group, and Mark Teedens from Noosh. First couple sessions, we focused on really what is supplier diversity, giving you an overview and talking about some of the challenges that are faced out there in the marketplace. The second, and we talked also about adoption, maturity, and kind of managing the data. And today's focus is really on reporting. And we look at policies, procedure, goals, KPIs, some of the different things that companies are doing to measure and monitor and track, some of which we've touched on in our prior sessions. And then really integrating technology and some of the value that can bring and some of the advantages that other organizations are gaining today by having that technology integrated in their process. And then how do you use the data and use the tools in place to gain a competitive advantage? So we'll start off, and initially we just start off by organizations with mature supplier diversity programs. They have goals in place, whether they be quarterly, annual, semi-annual. They use certain metrics to measure the success of their programs, and they have key performance indicators that are out there really trying to drive the value and give them something that they can potentially benchmark against with their competitors. They have a 360-degree visibility into the program. So not only at the procurement level, to the marketing level, it's up through their management teams all the way up to the C-suite, some of which we've touched on in prior discussions. As we talked about earlier, in some of the tools used, 56% are still using Excel and database technology, where actually 24% use a supplier diversity software to manage their programs, whether that be internal, and then some of them are using full external resources to manage their supplier diversity programs. So Dana, I know we've touched on some of this, but as we look at BioMarin and some of the challenges, how do you guys really look at tracking and managing your supplier diversity program and then setting your goals and your KPIs up to try to drive that improvement or advancement?
Yeah, I think, setting up some of the goals that we have are primarily driven, since we're in the pharmaceutical industry, right, by the government. So they're actually required for each segment that we have a certain percentage of spend. That said, when we try to set up goals for the year, it's just one of the things I think among many besides like risk, compliance, supplier diversity, savings, right? Everybody thinks sourcing is always focused on savings, but it's just another goal, another kind of tool in our tool belt that we use to be able to satisfy that need that we have to be able to sell to the government, with medicines and that sort. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. So Darren, when you look at it from a United standpoint, so Dana mentioned regulatory controls, and I know, knowing United, you've got regulatory, you've got client issues where they say you must use diverse suppliers, you've got your social responsibility, and then you've got your corporate goals. What are some of the things you guys do to kind of really build, or maybe when you started at United, where were you, and what are some of the things you've done to kind of mature your program and really focused on, improving the policies, establishing the goals, and developing what those KPIs are for the future?
Yeah, so we do a lot to capture key measures of our program performance. We measure tier 1 and tier 2 spend. We measure RFP inclusion. We measure RFP win conversion. Those are just a few of the metrics that we have in place today. But Ken, the vision is to be able to capture the ROI of our program, or the value creation, if you will, to capture it more holistically. And as I think about it, it'd be broken out into three different components. And the first would be measuring the P&L impact of supplier diversity on our business. Dana mentioned, cost savings. You've got revenue growth through, some of the compliance mechanisms that you spoke to, Ken. But you've got a whole host of impacts that's driven by supplier diversity that directly connects to our P&L that we should be able to capture. The second component would measure the impact to our supplier base, right? Capturing the growth and development that we're driving through a variety of initiatives that are helping them build scale and capability, through, our engagement from things like mentoring or educational sponsorship and other things like that. And then the last component would be capturing the economic impact in the communities that we serve. And as I spoke to a little earlier, that manifests itself through job creation, wages, tax generation, other community investment. I think being able to pull that together holistically will help folks understand the true ROI of our program. Now we're, leveraging different tools, different partners to pull that information together. Today, we leverage a third party to help us develop our economic impact reporting. Obviously, we've got some internal tools and systems that helps us try and quantify the impact to our P&L. But, looking for opportunities to leverage other technology as it relates to kind of this supplier development impact and broadening our thinking around economic impact. And so there's a whole host of opportunities that I think we're seeing as we think about the future of our reporting. But again, today we are capturing a variety of mechanisms that just help us, or a variety of metrics that just help us better understand the progress that we're making with our program.
Yeah, thank you. So Mark, as Noosh is a global organization, any additional thoughts that you guys look at when you think about it? Because you're not only looking domestically, you're looking globally.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the themes that have been intonated by both Dana and Darren are consistent across large global organizations. Whether it's, the folks out of the UK or Asia Pacific, our clients' customers work with large global companies, right? And the themes that are here just are played out with kind of different nuances and different data requirements by region. But what's interesting is the ability to roll up. And Darren, you mentioned measuring ROI. Noosh is really focused on some of those more operational aspects that you mentioned earlier, like RFE inclusion, spend capture, doing kind of that identification piece. The ROI in marketing and the ROI in anything is always harder to calculate, right? So it must be a real challenge in diversity management. But yeah, this theme is I would say that there's three themes that we see our global customers continuously ask us about. One is supplier diversity. The other is sustainability in marketing and sustainability in marketing materials management. That is a big one, and they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because it all kind of fits under the category of social responsibility or things like that. So those are the. Oh, and then I said three things. The last one that comes up is benchmarking, right? So, how am I doing in my supplier diversity program, my sustainability program, my spend analysis versus others in my cohort is a theme that comes up all the time globally. And regional differences are also interesting to kind of tease out when it comes up.
But I think there's also a compliance aspect there too, when you look at the policies that are established. So as simple as I'm a procurement expert and I'm supposed to include 2 or 3 diverse suppliers in all of my bids, having the ability to track that information and drive that back to make sure that those diverse suppliers are getting those opportunities is something that, is a very big piece of the kind of the policy side or compliance side, especially as we think about everybody, majority of us working from home, as we're seeing today. And you just find that technology and driving that compliance is a huge portion of it as well.
Absolutely.
As we move kind of in the next topic and we talk about technology and now really kind of focusing on how do we start to turn the tide? How do we leverage technology to really optimize the opportunities for marketing execution teams and service providers, as well as for the diverse suppliers? And I think the one key thing that usually comes up when we talk about technology is kind of that one or single source of truth, right? I've got one source to go to gather my information. I can pull in, rather than disparate systems, I can pull it all into kind of one database, manage it through one process, grab my reports, have it be timely, have them be accurate, create that transparency. We think a workflow technology enables you to look at the end-to-end workflow and pull in that information, bring in all the stakeholder activities. And then again, from a transparency standpoint, who are my qualified suppliers when we talk about the product and service offering to the marketplace? That's so important from a marketing execution person, whether it's on the agency side, doing content management, doing procurement activities. And then we talk a lot about reporting and just the adoption and trying to get that visibility back around to the C-suite that we touched on earlier in our conversation. So Dana, maybe we can go a little bit deeper into, or look at some of the tools that BioMarin uses today versus where you maybe would like to be. You talked a little bit about you're not really into phase 2 yet, but maybe give us a little bit of sense of kind of where you are today and how you kind of bridge the gap between marketing execution and procurement and some of the tools you use and maybe where you might like to be, in 1, 3, 5 years out from your strategy.
Yeah, so it's interesting in hearing like Darren talk about how far advanced they are and thinking about my program and how we're really like just in our infancy, right? We've adopted one technology that's helped us not only within sales and marketing, but across the company be able to identify small, diverse suppliers and quickly, right? We've got some of our data in there that we can say, hey, these are diverse suppliers, and anybody within the organization can go and then find to include in any RFP. But to get to phase 2, which would be good, I think that's the next step, right, in the technology chain. We really need to start looking for other solutions that can help us to be able to identify and then track and do all of those things. Quite honestly, integrating it with marketing activities, it's interesting to work with marketing folks because that's not typically one of their goals. And so if we have any type of technology that can help us and make it easier for them to whereas anybody in the organization or anybody within marketing can go and part of their selection, it's like, hey, by the way, you can choose this diverse supplier. That type of technology is something that I think is useful and it makes life easy for everybody, right? So to have a great program and to move it into phase 2, you really need to make it easy for the end user. And especially when it's not on top of their mind and it's not a goal of theirs, it's a goal of ours in sourcing. And so if we can make it easy for them to say, hey, look, there's a diverse supplier, I'm going to add them to our RFP, or if we can influence them by saying, hey, why don't you use the small diverse suppliers first? It's a great way to be able to push that, program forward, to be able to really try to take it into the next step and next phase where we are able to look back and track and say, how many RFPs did we include and how many small diverse suppliers have won and lost? Hopefully we'll be able to get there. But like I said, we've just kind of implemented phase 1. But I think definitely phase 2 and trying to find the right technology to support that and to be able to have for the entire organization even to leverage is really key in moving forward.
Well, thank you. So Darren, from a United standpoint, you've talked about third parties, you've talked about some of the different data elements you have. How do you guys bring all that together? It's got to be an enormous amount of data going from your procurement teams and your marketing teams and your third party sources you use. And Mark touched on data cleansing earlier in one of the sessions. And so how does United bring all that together and really bring it forth to be valuable to the users of the data?
Well, I think I'll thank Dana for categorizing us as advanced. I will tell you, Dana, we have a long way to go in our journey. But one thing I'll say, Ken, is we use a variety of different tools and technology to help us bring it together. Marketing specifically, they use a tool that does provide visibility to diverse suppliers as they are going through the the RFE process. And as such, they're able to, ensure inclusion of diverse suppliers for consideration in all of those business opportunities. I think some of the RFPs that are managed through procurement, they're working with supplier diversity, they're working with other databases that we've set up to gain visibility of diverse suppliers and ensure inclusion as they progress through the RFP process. And the back end is really, done today by pulling information out of a variety of different sources, putting it together in a number of different dashboards or reporting tools that help make it easy for us to assess progress. It helps make it easy for our business partners to not only understand who their diverse suppliers are across a variety of different taxonomy, but the progress being made with regard to leveraging these diverse suppliers. But I will say it's a variety of different tools being used to kind of pull all that information together and provide one source to our business partners to view and assess progress.
Yeah, it's got to be overwhelming with all the amount of data and the resources touching that. So, they talk about 43% of companies don't use marketing technology to really track their activities. The good news is 6% of a marketing budget is really set aside for technology. So Mark, as you think about those numbers, what are some of the things Nusha's done to support their clients by, through the use of technology to really try to advance that kind of marketing procurement activity?
Well, two things, and I'm going to refer to both Darren's and Dana's comments in doing this. So Dana's right in that the marketer, it needs to make their job easier, right? So there's always this goal between kind of the procurement goals or the sourcing, whether it's cost reduction, vendor selection, and then the marketer just getting their stuff done efficiently to drive ROI. I mean, marketers are being increasingly held responsible for driving revenue. So, it is this like, how do I do this really efficiently? So, how do we, from a technology standpoint, make it really easy for the marketer to deliver their campaigns and let's just be honest, marketing is getting a little bit more complex with all the personalization that's available, all the different formats that are available. And then frankly, with more vendors that can offer more point solutions to their enterprise clients, right? So how do we make that easier for the clients? So we're investing a lot of money, or a lot of our development time rather, in ease of use and enhancements to make this easy, while at the same time bringing in data that is important to corporate policy and compliance around supplier inclusion, right? So how do I push that in front of the marketer so that it's easy for them to get their job done and then see a little bit additional data there for them to to make decisions to support corporate supplier diversity goals. So that's one. Got to be easy to use. So we're working on that. It's a journey, right? So it's definitely something that we're striving to do. The second piece I want to point out in Darren's comment is, well, look, you're using a lot of different third parties. It's an ecosystem of solutions, right? I think that there is no silver bullet in the marketplace that says one provider does everything. It just doesn't exist. So I think from our standpoint, integration capabilities and partnering opportunities with like-minded suppliers that can help solve different aspects of the enterprise challenges as they move forward, whether it's a data problem, whether it's a AP problem, whether it's GL codes and kind of reporting back into the business as to you have a $1 million order for a lot of components. How do I split that up in terms of lots of different GL codes that might be in a complex environment? And we do business with kind of large financial services and healthcare businesses as well as some retail. And these problems come up all the time that we try to make it easy to use and then integrate with third-party systems.
Yeah, thank you. As we move in, kind of the next piece is we really kind of get into now, how do we take in the data, the technology, and create that competitive advantage? And when you look at it, statistics would show that, there's $2 trillion of purchase power in 2015, growing to $3 trillion of minority purchasing power by 2030. So how do we really, as professionals and with our colleagues, work together to try to drive that, diverse supplier network and make sure that those capabilities and that visibility is out there for those diverse suppliers? How do we continue to drive that accurate, timely data capture and then bring that to the appropriate folks within our organizations, and then really try to leverage that to drive change and drive further opportunities in the supplier diversity space, and then also create that adoption and get that awareness up, through the different ranks and across organizations, and create ultimately growth opportunities. And Darren, I think you touched on it earlier, where you looked at how do you kind of mentor those suppliers to say maybe there's a gap, but how do we help them understand what that gap is, whether it's a small, medium, or large organization, so they have the ability to make those changes and participate in some of those RFP exercises and start to win some of those opportunities. So Dana, as we look at that from a competitive advantage standpoint, how would you kind of look at it from BioMarin's standpoint as creating the competitive advantage, or using the data you have, and really maybe some of the goals or strategies that you guys have moving forward to try to advance with what you know today and some of the tools and process you put in place so far?
Yeah, I think, when you're in sourcing, you have a lot of data, supplier data management to look at. You have a lot of different systems to kind of combine and take, thank you, to take into consideration. Apologies. We have a guest who would like to join us, unfortunately. So I think it's just really taking a look at all the different ways you have supplier data and being able to amplify them, and having systems like a Teal Book, or having something like a Noosh that makes life easier to be able to execute, right? So when you have a system that can take your data and then amplify it with external data, I think that it makes life easier in trying to capture diverse spend. And it also helps improve your internal sourcing tools. And so to be able to take that data from these other more specific technology providers on diversity and use that for whether it's Coupa or Oracle, and enhance that data that typically can be stale, I think is really key. So having all these great new technologies that come out and make life easier, I think is a great way to really help our program and help kind of push us into better supplier data management, or just overall and in general, right? In all the different systems that we look at, whether it's sourcing, whether it's a P2P, or it's just kind of like a technology or reporting.
So Dana, from a United standpoint, or Darren, excuse me, from a United standpoint, what have you guys done to kind of create, create that competitive advantage, and what are the things maybe you guys have in your goals, as a kind of a 1-3 year plan to really help drive that competitive advantage for United Health Group?
Well, let me just start by saying having, accuracy in your diversity spend is critical, right? That's what you're developing your goals off of. That's what you're measuring progress against. And so having the tools that enable you to accurately capture your spend, your diverse spend, not only in totality, but to break it down by various classifications or categories, has been critical for us to be able to establish the appropriate level of goals across the procurement team, and ultimately will help us establish those goals across the business. But also it enables us to provide really good reporting that allows all of our employees to see their progress against their spend objectives or against their inclusion and conversion objectives. And that enables us to drive greater levels of engagement from our business partners, enables us to develop stronger strategies for growth and diversification of our supply chain. So I'll come back to the fact, Ken, that it all starts with having that accurate reporting and being able to leverage that as the tool to drive the type of behaviors needed to fuel growth for the program.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So Mark, as you look at, you've mentioned your recent partnership with Tealbook, and what are maybe some other things that you're thinking about or that Noosh might be focused on to help drive that competitive advantage for your clients in the supplier diversity space or for your marketing execution partners?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I have to say kind of goes back to what I said, I think, in the last slide. It's what does our 2 to 3 year plan look like as we evolve the solution? Marketing, production, and execution software typically historically has collected a lot of data, but it's different data than supplier diversity data. So we collect specifications, statement of work data, information about, components or marketing campaigns, right? So, and then in that, a lot of that's outsourced, whether it's to a printer or a production agency or whatever. We have the supplier name and spend data. But once you have that, how do you augment that data with third-party sources to give the enterprises a better picture of what's happening in their marketing, production, and management spend? So, you mentioned Tealbook. We're pulling in that supplier diversity data in real time so that not only there's reporting there, but it'll help the marketers make better decisions as they're thinking about, if I've sent out an RFP for this particular piece, how does that work? How do I augment that what I have with other third-party data systems? And I mentioned it was an ecosystem, so I don't want to invest in building that, since we have a great partner that's already been invested in building kind of that data piece. But there's another piece, I think, when we think about that kind of the data that we have and augmenting that with other data. So we're speaking specifically around print specifications, and sustainability, which kind of goes hand in hand in some cases, is that there's third-party data out there that can measure your environmental impact of a particular print job, right? So you think about pushing it out to the Environmental Paper Network, and then they'll return, hey, here's your impact on trees, water, energy, and greenhouse gas emissions. And if by changing that print specification to increase the recycled content, you can show how you've reduced your impact of that particular job, which is kind of an interesting thing in and of itself, right? So, and I mentioned benchmarking. It's like, well, how do we then use that data to help all of our community become better, right? So how is a particular organization doing with their supplier diversity goals? Well, it's this percentage, or how are they doing on the sustainability, or how are they doing benchmarking on, process cycle time, or even, savings or product costs, for example. Is how do I use that data to, help our clients benchmark themselves versus what's going in the marketplace to drive the overall improvement for the entire user community. So that's kind of what our kind of 3-year plan would look like, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Darren, Dana, any additional comments?
I think, what Mark mentioned is, a very strong approach, a good strategic approach. This focus on ESG, environmental, social, and governance mechanisms, is only going to continue to grow and expand within organizations. And so it sounds like, the focus that Mark is taking with his organization and putting in place mechanisms to be able to capture that, or partner with organizations that can help better capture that information and provide that to companies, I think better positions him for long-term success, him and his organization for long-term success.
Yeah, thank you. Dana, any closing thoughts?
No, just don't have children during the time of COVID. That's my only.
We appreciate your guest speaker. That was great. Well, thanks to everybody for attending. We hope that the information shared helps you and your organization advance its supplier diversity program and really kind of bridge the gap with some of the challenges that marketing execution teams face. I think we've had some good discussion on things like technology and policy procedures and data governance. Thank you to Dana and her daughter, and Carmen and Mark Teedens for their participation. And you guys have a great afternoon. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.